The disability I chose to research was diabetes. This condition is very widespread in the United States. It is also expected to increase with strong rates in years not too far from our present. Because of this, I want to prepare myself with a better understanding starting now. Another powerful reason that compelled me to look further into what diabetes encompasses was the fact that this disability has already made its way into my family. My mother suffers from this condition, and it would be extremely beneficial for me to learn more about this to help her along the way. From what I read, diabetes is an illness. Though the case is rare, it can also be congenital. The term diabetes of infancy refers to hyperglycemia that appears before the age of 6 months. According to the National Library of Medicine webpage, congenital diabetes mellitus is a rare disorder characterized by hyperglycemia that occurs shortly after birth. From a clinical standpoint, there are two basic forms of infantile diabetes that have been identified. Interestingly enough, one of these types of diabetes, transient, also known as TNDM, can disappear without much notice. The other type of diabetes infants can experience, permanent, also known as PNDM, demands long-term medication and treatment. To reiterate, these two types of diabetes are only infantile and not as common as the two world-renowned types, type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 and type 2 diabetes are the reason why this disability is labeled an illness. Diabetes is a long-term illness that disrupts how your body converts food into energy. Our bodies should make enough insulin, the hormone in charge of allowing the sugar in our blood to enter blood cells. However, when our bodies do not make enough of this hormone, we become diabetic. To quote the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention article, type 1 diabetes is thought to be caused by an autoimmune reaction, the body attacking itself by mistake. This reaction stops your body from making insulin. It is also important to know that type 1 diabetes is only found in 5 to 10% of the diabetic population, most often found in children, teenagers, and young adults. The article describes type 2 diabetes as when your body doesn't use insulin well and can't keep blood sugar normal levels. It is usually diagnosed in adults and in about 90 to 95% of the diabetic population. 3 symptoms that come with congenital diabetes include, but are not limited to, severe intrauterine growth retardation, which means that there are problems with the inner development of the infant's uterus, hyperglycemia, meaning excess sugar in the bloodstream, and dehydration. Congenital diabetes is thought to be a consequence of genetic mutations. These have been traced back to being the main cause of neonatal diabetes. A monogenetic illness is what it has been identified as. This indicates that a single gene mutation is what is causing congenital diabetes in the infant. Interestingly enough, researchers have found that this gene mutation is often inherited. The symptoms for type 1 diabetes are known to develop fairly faster than the type 2's symptoms, which is why it is diagnosed with more facilitation. As mentioned before, type 1 diabetes is thought to be caused by an autoimmune reaction. This reaction stops your body from making insulin, the hormone that aids in the entry of blood sugar into the body's cells so that it may be used as energy. It also signals the liver to store blood sugar for future consumption. The symptoms for type 2 diabetes are usually the same, but start off less intense because it develops over many years, so it has time to slowly increase symptom strength. Tying this disability back to psychology, it is important to know how much of an influence chronic illnesses can have on one's mental health. To quote the author of our textbook, her physicians described her disability and his recommendations for management and control, rather than recommendations for the cure. In this quote, though diabetes is being compared to a mental illness, It shows how physicians tell their parents that there is no curing them, only controlling what they feel and trying everything for it to get better. Imagine the hopelessness diabetic patients have to go through. The CDC article also mentions irritability becomes a feeling people with diabetes often experience. Many patients also experience depression and helplessness because they know this condition is more than likely not going away for a long time. Those with congenital permanent diabetes and type 1 diabetes know it will last forever. I know that when I did the role play experience, I felt isolated because the people around me did not understand my struggle with having to watch everything I was consuming. Shortly after, I asked my mom if this feeling was familiar to her, and to my surprise, she said yes.